Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Really excited to be talking to all of you today. We're just going to wait a minute or two as I see that a lot of folks are starting to join us. We have a really packed agenda to go through with everybody. I've got Carolina and Ryan here on the line. And just as a quick kind of reminder, we're going to be recording the session. If you have questions, please do just pop them into the chat. Actually, you'll see there on the bottom right, there's a chat that you can interact with us. We have a couple of folks in the background who will be monitoring questions as and when throughout, and we'll mostly leave them through the end, but sometimes we also like to make it quite interactive. So as and when we get started talking through, please make sure to ask them. I think with that, we're about a minute or two past the hour. Again, I see there are a few other folks who are joining, so we'll just give people another second and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Amazing. So in terms of the agenda, as I mentioned, a pretty packed agenda. We'll start with a quick introduction. Then we're going to go into really the meat of the session, which is talking about the trends that we're all seeing in global benefits and the different perspectives based on the folks that you have on the call today. We'll go through a bit of a panel discussion on a few topics that we know are of interest, and again, then wrap up with a Q&A. We'll try to keep it in time so that people can exit in through at the end of the hour. But again, if you have questions, we're always also available post the call, and it's always when a lot of the good conversation happens. So with that, I figured we'd start with quick introductions. I'm already talking, so I'll go first. For those of you I haven't met, so my name is David. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here at Ben, and we'll talk a little bit more about what Ben is in a second. But I'm joined here today by Carolina and Ryan, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well. So maybe we start with you, Carolina.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for the attendees of today's sessions. I always love to have the opportunity to speak, even virtually, about global benefits is my passion. I've worked in this industry for more than 30 years. I joined Fidelity about 3 years ago, coming from big consulting firms, but really joined Fidelity under the workplace consulting. I don't know if many of you might not know that Fidelity has a global consulting practice, and we are doing very good things and very innovative things. And I think one of the key themes of the webinar is a little bit of innovation in thinking about global benefits. So I hope you enjoy it. Ryan?
Hey, thanks, Carolina, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Blacklock. I'm the Director of Benefits here at BMC Software. Been with BMC about 5 years, been in the industry 25 years now. So really excited to be here. I think I'm probably a good representative as we are currently implementing the Thanks Ben platform, so kind of real-time experience, and just excited to kind of share our challenges and deliverables for BMC.
Amazing. Great. So in terms of just to kickstart the conversation, I wanted to give a quick introduction about Ben. For those of you who don't know us, at Ben, we're building what we believe is the world's most flexible benefits platform, and we have a very close relationship with Fidelity, which we'll talk about in a second. And really our goal is to marry what we think is best-in-class benefits technology and delivery with a partner like Fidelity, who is able to then deliver when it comes to speaking about this. Carolina was saying best-in-class benefits strategy, right? And we are at Ben powering Fidelity's global wallet, which is a full-scale solution to deliver benefits administration and allowances, lifestyle spending accounts outside of the US. And we do that by together leveraging the expertise of the Fidelity Global Benefits Consulting team, who can then provide all of the insights, right, when it comes to actually implementing the Ben system. And today we'll talk a little bit about, again, some of the challenges, some of the things that we see, and we think is a really nice sort of different perspectives, right? Myself coming from more of the technology standpoint, Carolina coming from a little bit more of the benefits consulting world, and then Ryan, obviously the internal kind of delivery and sort of how all of that comes together to to bring best-in-class global benefits to people. In terms of, with that kind of setting the scene a little bit for what we want to talk about today. So the world is global, right? Obviously, and as we see more and more companies sort of expanding into different locations, benefits are not in a way, and need to be adapted, especially to local market practices, local nuances. And a lot of companies, a lot of folks we talk to really struggle to be able to do that. And particularly for multinationals who might have, small potentially populations distributed across a lot of different countries, how do they bring that all together into one cohesive strategy and one cohesive experience to every employee? Particularly where maybe implementing systems in the past where you didn't have, best-in-class technology was quite cost prohibitive. And so kind of coming together with Fidelity as well, realized, hey, there's a real opportunity to be able to deliver the innovative benefits strategy and designs that Caroline and her team are coming up with, where the technology is not a barrier to implementing that and making that a reality. And so really that's part of what we want to talk about today, and going into a number of different topics. With that, I guess I'd love to pass it on to kind of Carolina, who's going to talk a little bit more about what she sees happening in the market and what are some of the challenges that we see our clients and other global companies facing. So maybe over to you, Carolina.
Thanks, David. And I would love to see the reaction on the chat if anything that I'm here or that I'm going to say here resonates with you or not, or maybe there is something else. So just to set this scene a little bit here, at Fidelity, we run 2 global surveys on an annual basis. So one focusing on the employer, and the other one focusing on the employee, what we call employee sentiment survey. So both really global surveys. And I don't want to go over, and I think you're going to receive the deck afterwards, so I don't want to go over all of those numbers here, but mainly the key themes that we are hearing from those 2 sides of the coin here. So on the company side of things, on the corporation side of things, I think there are 3 main items that we are hearing more and more, not only from the survey, but also when I speak with my clients or on the global side. So one is technology, implementing technology across the board, not only in benefits, but also across the board within the organization, is a big challenge. So, of course, we know a lot that technology is coming to help ourselves, to bring efficiencies, but there is a lot of people scared about that. So one good example is AI. I love innovation. I love those type of things, but I understand there are so many challenges when companies are thinking about that. And sometimes I feel on the benefit side, people are kind of more protective in terms of the information, how the information is to be shared with employees, and what can we do, what can't we do. So this is a big challenge. The other one is cost, right? So cost is, I would say, every single day we talk about how we can better manage cost of benefits, the cost of benefits across the world. We are going to talk a little bit more during the webinar about some strategies that we are seeing very effective. And finally, how to deliver best experience or better benefits to the employees, better benefit in a way that you really connect with what employees are looking for. So those are the 3 themes that are really top of mind when I speak with my clients and when we hear from the survey. Moving to the employee side of the coin. Oh, maybe we can read. Yes, thank you. So on the employee side of the story is what we're hearing is that even when companies are offering more and more benefits, they're still not super happy. So what we call they are restless at work. So because the thing is, what is happening now is it's not only benefits, it's not total rewards, it's not only compensation that is really bringing happiness and joyful to the work environment. Is really what we call the belonging, is really the value of my work. The work that I deliver at Fidelity Global Consulting is really important, right? So it's really important to my organization. I can see the value of my work within the organization. My manager understands that and recognize that. So it's all about the culture. It's all about the value of what I do each and every day. Also, it's all about the different things. So we are working in an environment where we have multiple different generations. And I presume that what is important to me from a benefit standpoint is probably not the same as David, is probably not the same as Ryan. So how companies are looking into that from my perspective and delivering on that. So it's a pretty challenging environment. And if we move to the next slide, this is what is happening, and this is what is resulting on this environment. It's very complex. I'm not going into all the details here, but if you think that, and based on our understanding, if you look at all the different benefits and policies that every company offers in a given country, we are talking about an average of 15 to 30 benefit policies per country. If you multiply, let's say that your company has 10 countries, we are talking about 300 policies. If you're thinking that your company has 20 countries, it's 600 policies. So it's a lot to manage. And it's a very dynamic work, as David mentioned. So everything is changing all the time. And it's very hard to get a hold on everything, and also to really bring efficiencies. And at the end, where we are seeing is that our clients are really overwhelmed with so many things happening, and really, unfortunately, focusing their time on those day-to-day activities and spreadsheets all over the places. So if we move to the next slide, this is what we are calling here a global minimum flex, which is the next generation of bringing those pieces together. So flex or flexible benefits is something that has been in play for a while, but this is really picking up because it really tackles all those different challenges that companies are facing. So it's starting from the cost and sustainability all the way to being recognized as an employer of choice. But to really make it happen and to make a successful global flex strategy, there are 4 components that companies need to think about. So it's where, even if you offer flex, what is from your perspective, not looking at the market, but knowing who your company is and your values and your value proposition, what is your duty of care? What is your minimum standard as a duty of care? Moving them to flexibility and choices to really address what employees are thinking and what they need. But then this is very good, but if you don't have a technology to help you on that, it's not going to achieve your goal. So you need to have the technology, and as David alluded to, technology now is very flexible. It's much more affordable. It's something that you can implement. And using the technology to deliver, to make employee experience easy, but also to provide you as a benefit leader the data that you need to enhance and evolve over time. And not forget about communication. I think technology is great, the benefit design, the strategy is great, but if we don't achieve employees, if we don't well articulate those values to the employee, it's pretty hard to get the ROI. So I think those are the 4 main components companies should be thinking about. If that makes sense, David, I don't know. Does it make sense?
Yeah, amazing. No, I think that all really resonates. I think nobody more to bring it to life than maybe Ryan, right? Having that experience from in-house, trying to manage and deliver this across multiple countries. I guess, when you came to Fidelity, to Ben, what were some of the challenges that you were facing? And again, does it resonate to some of the things that Carolina was talking about?
Yeah, I think between your intro and Carolina's slides there, you're telling the story of BMC pretty succinctly, honestly. So, I mean, being a software company, obviously technology is important to us, right? In fact, our mantra as a company is to be an autonomous digital enterprise, right? So that's the proposition that we deliver to our clients. So the charge for us is really internally to do the same, right? So for our support services is to be more autonomous. But you touched on it pretty well with respect to some of our smaller to mid-size countries. So BMC is about 7,000 employees, but that's spread among 40 countries. So we do have areas where, to your point, it just heretofore wasn't feasible to implement these systems to meet the employee needs and frankly expectations that you would think in the modern era here. So for us, we're looking to streamline kind of a fit between where are we very manual today and where is there large enough headcount to where it really is to a certain extent very burdensome. And Carolina had the slide where you just kind of being inundated with these very manual tasks and processes and not able to focus on the more strategic aspects. So we started off with the countries of Mexico, Canada, and the UK as our pilots. Couple of different goals we were looking to achieve. One to the wallet aspect with respect to reimbursement. So one concern we had there, not only to automate, but with also privacy as it's increased in importance on the global stage. So embarrassed to say to a certain extent, but we had, if you're in the U.S., you'd be, reminiscent of a flexible spending account, if you will. So one of our countries has a very similar program for their medical plan, and with that being managed in-house manually, our finance group was actually responsible for adjudicating those types of claims. So obviously, right away, there's a privacy concern, which we were looking to, again, automate, but also, kind of shift that. That risk or that exposure to a vetted third party. So we met our needs there. Second, kind of a disjointed employee experience. Not surprisingly, in each country they use multiple vendors to fulfill the total rewards experience, but that would often necessitate visiting multiple sites just to kind of get a complete cohesive picture of what that total rewards experience was. Whereas in the Ben platform, that consolidates to a single source of truth, which makes much easier and much more satisfactory employee experience. And frankly, somewhat self-servingly, once you kind of see that collected in a single spot, it's a better retention tool as well, right? Because if you're disengaged because it's so complicated to visit multiple places, multiple sites, versus a simple single sign-on to where you're seeing kind of a total benefits statement, if you will. It's a much more powerful tool that I think speaks to the employees and just kind of reminds them of what a valuable benefit they have.
Yeah, amazing. I think it also resonates a lot with other kind of challenges that we see from other clients as well, in terms of, if I can summarize what you were saying there, Ryan, it's really around kind of communication, right? How do you communicate benefits in a way that employees would actually appreciate them? Because obviously BMC, it's not like you weren't doing a lot for them, right? You were, right? But how do you actually provide that transparency to the individual employees so that they know what's available and actually appreciate it? I say that's kind of number one. The second point that you mentioned really there, which I think resonates with your autonomous digital enterprise point, is around how do you make sure that the technology is actually tailored and has the workflows that you need in order to automate a lot of the administration. Benefits are very admin heavy, right? We always say they're a collection of just rules and workflows and things that need to happen. And unless you kind of have a system that can deal with that and can actually be configured in the way that you would want, then it's really actually hard to deliver that in a simple way. And so what you usually end up is having a lot of people doing things behind the scenes, but that might be quite inconsistent or challenging. And then then when you're coming with new designs or new ideas or new ways of doing things, a lot of times, as we're having the conversation with, say, Carolina and her team, how do you actually deliver these things in a seamless way? And so I think all those points will resonate with a lot of the folks who are in the audience, as I can see a lot of them come from other organizations that might have people across multiple locations. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that. As you see, like another challenge that we see a lot of organizations facing is not only on that kind of administration, employee experience side, but also just maximizing benefits spend, right? So the amounts that companies are investing into benefits. And some of the challenges that we see sometimes, again, has to do with potentially that appreciation point, but it's not like companies aren't spending usually a lot of money on these types of things. So it's not necessarily about spending more, especially in the economic environment, right, which is fluctuating. Maybe it's starting to get a little bit better, but it's not like you have infinite budget available to be able to spend on these things. So maybe Carolina, you see a lot, right, when it comes to engaging with organizations in this point, and you mentioned one of the challenges is looking at benefits in a cost sustainable way. So could you expand a little bit more about what you're seeing and what that means?
Yeah, and I think also like back also to what Ryan mentioned is about the experience. Sometimes because you don't have the technology to deliver and you are not really demonstrating all the benefits that you offer, sometimes people feel that, oh, just adding benefits might be a good way to improve the experience, and then you come to the cost aspect, right? So maximizing or even managing benefits in a sustainable way is not about adding benefits or not looking at, so it's how you manage everything that you have. And there are various opportunities for maximizing the value. So I think one of the things that we are hearing from our clients and benefits is the level of the cost of benefits are increasing much rapidly compared to business results. That's the challenge. So we need to find a way to bring those pieces together, right? So we keep saying about medical inflation. First of all, I hate, to be honest, the medical inflation poison. I think we are working in an environment where medical inflation is here. There's nothing we can do. There's tons of things we can do. So don't take that for granted. So look at also like from a value of benefits standpoint. So we talk a lot about ROI, return on investment, but also about the value of benefits. And to really measure the value of the benefits to the organization, to a business standpoint, is really looking at how the benefits that you offer within a certain region, within a certain country, is helping attracting more people, is helping retaining more people, or more importantly, the main group of people that you want to attract as a business leader. So data is super important to that, right? So when you bring those pieces together from a technology standpoint and you can see the entire data, you can make those connections and really bring into your C-suite the value of the benefit, the detail about why I'm here, right? So why I'm working with benefits and why benefits so important, because it really helps retaining people, attracting people with numbers. So I think we are more and more, benefit leaders are more and more asked about or challenged to really present those results, why we're offering that and why we need to keep increasing costs, right? So I think this is a little bit of the take a step back and think about really how you can connect the benefit costs with the business results.
Yeah, and I think especially when you look at things outside of the US as well, or globally, and then Ryan, happy to potentially hear your thoughts. But what we see is a lot of companies who have been kind of doing the same thing, right, year on year, and don't stop and take a step back and then analyze and be like, hey, the population, the workforce has changed, right? The environment has changed, the demographic has changed, and sometimes kind of either because focused on the busy work of just making sure that things are ticking over, you don't really have the opportunity to do that. So when you're looking at a new system or delivering a new experience, is a really good opportunity to do that. Obviously, we're a flexible benefits platform, right? So we like to harp on and on in terms of, as Carolina was mentioning early on, right? What's right for me is very different than what could be right for her or for Ryan or for anybody else. But we see again, this concept hasn't been. It's not like it's a new concept. It's been around forever. But what most companies mean by flexible benefits is maybe I can add dependents into my health plan, or I can increase my 401k or my pension contributions by a little bit, and that's flexibility. Whereas kind of what we're trying to bring to the markets, it's more. Carolina made this point around globally, sort of defining those minimum standards of care, right? The things that as a company you believe are the right things to put in place for the team, and you want to provide regardless, but then letting everybody mix and match, right, and make changes. And we know that sometimes companies aspire to be able to deliver that, but if you don't have the right kind of strategy, the right system in place, it becomes really hard to do that in a sustainable way. And then also looking at the data, right? So one of our value props, or one of the things that we really pride on, is taking advantage of all the new technologies and things that are out there to actually bring insights into how are budgets actually being spent. Are you spending things in the most active and impactful ways that you can? Because a lot of times what we see as organizations aren't, right? A lot of organizations, for example, don't take advantage of even simple things like tax advantages, right, that might be available in a particular location, depending on the types of benefits, because they don't want to add other things to sort of disrupt what they have in place. So those are a bit the direct costs, but also then the indirect costs, right, around all the administration that might go behind the scenes there as well. And I think, Carolina, you had probably a couple of
And
points
can I
around.
give there are some very low hanging fruits. So you don't need to spend thousands of hours or wait like 3 years to get some results. So there's some very low hanging fruits that really are bringing costs down. So I would say, first of all, understand your direct costs. So let's take healthcare as an example, which is among the benefits usually the most expensive one. So there are opportunities to look at network. There is opportunity to look at self versus full insured. There is opportunity to look at co-payments. There is opportunity to look at regional and global financing structure, like pooling, like captives and things like that. And I would call out also the sometimes blurry costs, which are mostly on the provider side. So outside the US, broker commissions are really, really the norm. Broker commissions can come from 5% all the way to 25, 30%. And this is another thing that we just keep it going, right? So the premiums are increasing and commissions are increasing in the same pace. Does it make sense? I'm not against brokers, but brokers are really earning a lot of money. So there are tons of opportunities to sit with your broker and review what they're doing, the services that they are providing versus their remuneration. So think about that. Look at your contracts with providers, with retirement providers or other providers. Are the fees that you're paying to those providers aligned to the current market? So we've seen all sorts of different things about that. So those are some of the low-hanging fruits that companies can really look at and doesn't need to wait forever, right?
Yep, I think those are really good points. I don't know if, Brendan, you have anything to add on the cost side, but otherwise I think we'll move on to the admin side, but just giving you the opportunity to add anything if you have.
Yeah, not to put too fine a point on it, and this is really more kind of in parallel to the cost, but obviously, replacement costs. If you lose someone to attrition, I've seen examples where, again, they don't realize the full benefit proposition just because we're competing for attention, right? There's so much information coming at you, and so I've seen people, take a position where, they go elsewhere for what they perceive to be a better benefit when they may have had something, equivalent or even better, but they didn't realize it. You tell it in a benefits newsletter and it's gone. It could be a policy or something that's not necessarily a contracted benefit that they're going to receive something from a vendor, but rather just some kind of niche offering that if, again, you see this in an aggregated source that is, reminding you, it's in your face, and you're developing this habit of going to this site to, self-service and do what you need to do from a self benefits administration, you're reminded more frequently than you would be, say, from an email or a newsletter. So it's related, not exactly the same, but again, it's really important to us to have that laid out in a single place.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Amazing. So that's one of the challenges that we see. I think moving on to the next one, which is again a bit related, right? Because there's always the hidden cost of an indirect cost of administration, right? And it can also be a direct cost in the sense of because people aren't sort of signing up, or you're not managing policies in the right ways and things like that. You might have challenges in managing things like healthcare inflation, etc. It's really about kind of how do you make sure that you get the right benefit to the right person at the right point in time. And so some of the ways that we see that we're helping companies to tackle benefits admin is one, trying to add automation where we can. It's not possible everywhere, right? Particularly when it comes to the different limitations on usually the provider's side of things, or all the things that we have to put in place, but as much as we can by adding, being tailored to the different workflows, building and configuring a benefit according to whatever you need to be able to automate those processes. So just a kind of a couple of examples to put in that, if say a company or a provider requires things like wet signatures and things like that in this day and age, which globally they do, right, in order for people to enroll into a medical plan, or in some cases we have clients like, for example, in Austria, where you actually have to sit down with a retirement advisor before you're able to go through your pension enrollment, right? Or in certain situations we need to collect additional data from the employee in order to process that. So actually being able to build that all into a system where the workflow becomes simple for an employee to provide, but you're actually able to manage that all in one place. One of the things that I'm always surprised by when we're talking to other organizations, how many, even despite them having an existing benefit system, they'll be managing things outside of that system because they can't handle the complexity of the workflow of how that benefit actually works. So that's one of the things that we're trying to change with Ben. The second point is really around connectivity, right? Being able to add that connectivity between all the different systems and providers. It's kind of commonplace, hopefully, to connect with HRIS systems, etc., to ingest data, but it is a challenge sometimes as well, right? In terms of how that is all managed and pieced together. And then it's about importing the data in an easy way, and then also exporting that out to where it needs to go in a format that you're trying to avoid, any manual data entry, downloading, reformatting, re-uploading. It's amazing what we see, right, in terms of what companies are doing and how they manage things with templates on Excel sheets and emails and all this kind of things. So I usually say, like, if benefits have to work in that in the same way in 10, 20 years from now as they do today, we're definitely doing something wrong because it has not been properly solved. I guess, Ryan, with that, right, like I think that was one of the main reasons why you engaged with Fidelity and the Global Wallet and with us. Like, what are you seeing in terms of being able to minimize that admin burden that comes with having great benefits programs?
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on. I mean, honestly, in one of our countries, it was a literal spreadsheet still. I think part of that was a vendor limitation, and part of that was a HRS limitation. But it was definitely more work than it was necessary. I think it led to more risk. If someone wasn't, if a joiner wasn't entered, timely, and if something were to happen, for example, and they didn't have coverage, you could have risk there. Or the inverse of that, if you had a lever that was missed due to a manual process, someone was on vacation, whatever the case may be, with that not being automated, you could potentially, have opened up benefits longer than they should have been. So a whole wealth of reasons why automation is important, just to free up the HR professionals to move on to more strategic things, but again, to kind of minimize or eliminate that risk as well.
Amazing. And then, I guess, Carolina, anything to add from your side in terms of what you're seeing?
Yeah, and maybe can I maybe do something different here, because I saw a question from Jeff coming up, which I feel that it's kind of tackle also can address what we are discussing here. So his question is about like having employees across, or remote workers, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken, across several countries, right? And I presume eventually the mobility is kind of the key aspect here. People moving from one country to another, or even working remotely. So this is bringing a lot. If we start thinking about offering benefits on a country by country basis, it will be, I don't recommend that for various reasons, right? So it brings a lot of complexities to you, even to the employees. The experience will not be good. So thinking about maybe offering something that either is on a regional basis that can offer like going back to my consideration about minimal level of coverage, like a life and disability is a great example, where eventually you can think about some regional one policy fits all approach. And then from maybe adding flex allowances, where you as an employer, depending on how many employees you have across those countries, you as an employer, you can offer a specific budget. We can help figuring out what this budget would be, but having them, the employees, selecting and purchasing the benefits. So the technology can help, but also thinking from a strategy standpoint, does it make more sense? So of course, it really depends on where those employees are, how many employees in each location and things like that. But there are ways now to think a little bit outside the box, and not necessarily, I always talk to my clients, benchmarking is good, but benchmarking alone will not drive your strategy. So think about your needs and your business. And from your business standpoint is more important than anything else. So happy to take this offline, Jeff. But I just wanted to kind of also come with some of the ideas here that helps with benefit administration.
Yeah, amazing. And I think to that point, right, it all really depends when we're talking to the clients. It's really, what is the expectation of how do you set up the business, and what is that going to look like across the multiple locations? So are you planning to grow in some, in others? In that case, you might actually want to set up the local plans. In others, if it's like, usually we say people say under 20, 30 individual employees in a particular location, it's not worth it, right? Like, might as well just give them, and we see some organizations who have even been doing that at a much larger scale, where they really just give folks an allowance and say, hey, purchase your own medical cover, because by having 20, 30, 50, even 100 employees, might not even necessarily get a better rate if we went out and procured a group contract. So it really depends on the shape, size, and how the organization is developing, right? And which countries. Some countries are really complex, right, when it comes to actually setting all these plans up. Others are way simpler. So there's a lot to take into consideration, obviously. But we would usually say in the beginning, try to keep things as simple as possible. And then as and when the organization develops, you can start layering on and adding those additional things. Obviously, you need to take into account things that are regulatory, right? Obviously, that you need to provide because you need to do it. But there's a lot on top to sort of take in and decide before you're able to actually build that cohesive strategy. As opposed to that point around flexible benefits, Carolina, you see a lot in terms of how that's evolving on the flex side. Maybe you can provide a little bit of insight into what you're seeing other organizations do when it comes to flex.
So flex is an interesting thing because what flex means, right? So flex can mean anything, right? So we see organizations defining flex as offering voluntary benefits, which is employee paid, all the way to really providing a budget, and the employee can do whatever they want with the total budget that is being offered. So, and between the two, there's a big different things that can happen, right? Of course, we have countries that are more advanced in terms of flex possibilities, offerings, products available in the market compared to others. But this is evolving super rapidly. And I will give an example of something that is very recent that just happened here in the US where I am. which is kind of an eye-opening for all of us. So retirement contributions, 401k contributions in the US, there are a lot of different aspects related to retirement contributions because of tax deductibility, IRS, our tax regulator here. So a lot of different things. There is a new regulation that came up like maybe 2 months, about 2 months ago, 1 month ago, allowing companies to offer the opportunity to ask employees how they want to receive the employer retirement contribution, if they want to keep them on the retirement plan or if they want that contribution to go to another program. So this is just an idea of such a kind of a traditional benefit in the US where the regulators are taking a step back saying, hey, employees are thinking differently. They are asking different things. So we need to take a step back and provide more flexibility and less control. So this is coming, and it's coming very rapidly. So we have countries like UK, India, Hong Kong, even Singapore, where flex is kind of the norm. It's a pretty advanced market in terms of flex benefit offerings. We have others like my home country where I was born, Brazil, others like France, where this is still not well widespread. There is a lot of regulations limiting the availability of flex, but still we can do. So it's something that we still can do. Of course, we need to, as I think David mentioned that about the looking at the local regulation, but there are opportunities to bring some flex programs into the bucket, and most importantly, helping controlling the costs, because I think there is also this opportunity to better control the costs once you have a budget that you as an employer defines to cover for employees.
Yeah, and I think just to add on that a little bit, because we're having a lot of the conversations around, and some organizations might not be ready, right, for depending on what they have in place, and making change, especially changing folks' contractual benefits, is always difficult. Sometimes we're having conversations, even if they might be spending, say, a lot or doing different things. If you're trying to take away or change the way that things work, it has to be properly managed, properly communicated, right? And we always think about, what's the positive framing that you can put on it in terms of how is that going to actually impact the employees' lives. And it's such an intuitive concept, right? That just like every reward, everything like personalization is having a much bigger and bigger effect. And it just makes sense, right? That me as an employee joining a company, I get a certain benefits. Why is it fixed to particular things that I can't influence, right? There's a limit with flex. Usually we say, with power comes responsibility to educate, to tell employees in terms of what does that mean? How do they make sure that they have the right selections for them, right? So kind of navigating them to make the best selections that they can, because ultimately, if you're not providing different things, which is where the minimum standard of cares come in, you might sort of feel the backlash of that as well, right? So it's just being very thoughtful around which elements do you make flex, how do you make it flexible, and what is the spend that you can allocate to that as well. And it's very different in terms of market maturity where they are kind of taking that, but it is hopefully a bit of an intuitive concept. It also influences the employee experience, right? And kind of Ryan wanted to bring you in here as well. How do you think about, as you're implementing sort of the Fidelity wallets, right? Putting all into this place, maybe that is that flexible element as well you want to take into account, but what are you kind of thinking through, or what are you most looking forward to as you're doing this?
Yeah, so our goal, we want employees to be more engaged and take more of an active approach to taking care of themselves, right? We're not saying we're trying to completely offload and put the burden on them, but I mean, we've touched on it a couple of times already. Benefits, typically, I'll say US at least is your second largest expense behind payroll, right? So, you want to get the most for that proposition and help employees recognize that, and then, take the steps necessary to be, better consumers and get what they need. So it all kind of ties together as far as the flex approach, the value proposition and the recognition, and further just making it less intimidating. I think for a lot, benefits is something you don't really want to think about until you need them, and at that point it's usually kind of a crisis mode, right? So if you can present something that's more user friendly from a technology platform standpoint, that they can go in and kind of get more familiar with what these things mean, and how does it apply to me. I think you're going to naturally get that engagement, because it's not such a scary thing anymore, right? So yeah, just really trying to just make it more enjoyable, less intimidating, and get them more plugged in and engaged.
Yeah, I think just to kind of double click and add to that, I think you made a really good point there in terms of, if you're not in benefits world, if you're not in the benefits industry, it's really sometimes difficult to forget that it's not like every employee is thinking about what benefits they get every point in time, right? And thinking through what the strategy is a lot of it is on moment of need, or it's on the life event, or it is on kind of the changes that are happening, and how do you make it really easy to get the information when you need it, because let's be real, right? It's not like every employee is consuming the benefits information at every point in time. It's really usually on a much as needed basis. So I think that's a really good point. And how do you make it simple for them to get through to that visibility when it is that they need to access things? And benefits are still complex, right? Every benefit works slightly differently in terms of what's covered, how does it work, and how do you simplify that as much as possible. Carolina, anything to add from your side there?
Yeah, and simplification is, I think, the what we are looking for, right? Yeah. So I think on the next slide, I have an example of how we tackle communication and benefit communication within Fidelity, and we focus on those three pillars. It needs to be relevant. It needs to come with a trust. So you need to trust who is giving you the message, and the value. And just to exemplify a little bit here, I love the one day I heard about the car propaganda or example. And when you think about you as a consumer and you look at car propagandas on the TV or whatever, you look at, because first of all, it's relevant because eventually you need a car to go from point A to point B, right? So it's relevant to you. You want to take a look at that. It's a brand that you trust. So trust needs to be there. It's safety, provides you safety and all of those aspects. But the value is the key thing. So if you look at a car propaganda, it's not about the features, but it's really about the experience that a car will bring to you, if you think about how they position that advertising. So you come to, yes, I need a car, I trust that brand, but it's really about the experience of driving a car or something like that, or a family vacation or whatever it means, right? Think about that from the lenses of benefit. And you don't need to go into the granular aspect of a healthcare plan is covering this, and that. Be more macro, be more meaningful to your employees, right? In terms of how to communicate that. And if we flip to the next one, this is an example of a campaign that we developed for Ben, which is a major global company. And in this case, it was a total rewards experience, talking about compensation, benefits, and everything related to total rewards. And I think it's all about not only showing the money, but also about why. So bringing also that concept that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, which is why I'm here, why I'm working for this organization. So it tackles that kind of value proposition behind the scenes. So it's not talking about you as an employee, you receive this, and that, and this is the total value. Of course, it was also there, but it's about why. Why, in this case, Saint-Gobain is offering all of that to you. Because we value, because it's an experience when you work for Saint-Gobain. So I think that's a little bit of some of the highlights here, which then turned it into a very successful communication campaign with tangible ROI. So again, doesn't need to be super complicated. This was like a 2 or 3 to reward campaign that each employee received. But again, it's the value behind the scenes, right? So that at the end doesn't overcomplicate communication. Don't be afraid of communicating. Doesn't need to be super complex, doesn't need to be cost prohibited, but bring that experience to when you to the communication, to the benefits communication.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Caroline, and it's something that I've been something that I've talked to somebody maybe even 4 or 5 years ago that really stuck to me, as in when we were just starting with Ben. Actually, is if you think about benefits, there are products to be marketed, right, in a certain way, and what that means is you're not a lot of. I think it's very easy, especially if you're in the role, to talk about the features of a benefit. So again, this is what's covered, this is how it works, this is the thing, very functional, which is important, but ultimately, it's what benefit does that benefit bring, right, in a way, and how do you market it in that way, and how does that also kind of coalesce into the employer value proposition and the company's values and everything that you're trying to bring through to in one, right, that deliver that total people experience. I don't know if, Ryan, you have anything to add on the communications side of things before we move on to the questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've kind of touched on it a couple of times. The communications is our biggest challenge. We're competing for, time and attention. I think it sounds like, just looking at some of the comments, we're very dispersed, very global. So that remains the biggest challenge. So, I feel like setting this practice or this culture of engagement, again, with more self-service, to try to develop these habits of, okay, this is my single, source of truth that will help in your communication efforts, because you can, in theory, put your changes there, make it front and center. But thinking about the banner, right, the customized banner, like if you need something in somebody's face and you've sort of instilled in your population this practice to go out and engage with these benefits, then that's like an additional channel of communications that could be another tool in the tool belt.
Yeah. And I think, Ryan, just to add on that, as soon as you have data, you'll be able to see, like, in that particular country, maybe that particular profile of employee or group of employees, they deserve a specific attention, they specific more target actions. So it's also about targeting your audience, right? So
Absolutely.
As much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because sometimes even when we're talking personalization as well can be different than kind of flexibility, right? Because personalization is down to the individualization, right, down to the specific individual and what they need at that point in time. A lot of times, because it's really difficult to do that without having a strategy and a system in place to support it, it's very easy to default into the common sort of generic, like people of this age brackets or of this demographic, or office staff versus non-office staff, when what you actually want is down to this particular individual in that situation and that point in time, right? And obviously that's the holy grail, really difficult to deliver, but we see it, and it's possible to do that. I guess we're coming toward towards the tail end of the conversation, and I do see there are a bunch of questions that have come through, and I want to make sure we get through that. And we'll also I always try to finish the webinar a little bit early. I know a lot of folks are back-to-backs on different things, so and we have a couple polls and things like that to come back. So we'll try to wrap up at least 3 to 5 minutes before. But let's see if we can get through some of these questions. So maybe starting with first one by Charlie. How can companies stay compliant with local benefits regulations? Maybe I'll let Caroline, you start with that one, and I can add my 2 cents. And maybe
why we need to talk about compliance? Don't end the seminar, the webinar like that.
That's why I picked the first one. Yeah, that's the first question.
So, how to stay compliant? So, I think there are various ways. So, first, you need to have access to information, right? So, there is a lot of sorts of different. We can support. Fidelity can support with that, but also having access to information, to regulatory changes, or even what we do is anticipating that. So, if there's something coming up in a specific country, anticipating that, like for instance, just as an example for us here, we have many of us might have presence in Europe. So there is a new regulation coming up about pay transparency, which includes benefits, includes everything. So anticipating about that, understanding the impact to your organization is super important. But there are various sources of information, even public information available. Please feel free to send me an email. I can send you those links where it's available publicly. But it's a challenge, and I understand it's a challenge for most organizations. Because eventually you can rely on different providers, but its compliance is a challenge and is a dynamic world. So we need to have experts together with us to help.
Yeah, and you touched on it earlier, and I do get your point. But one of the advantages in the arrangement that we're in, which is more or less a traditional broker arrangement, is we do rely on them to ensure that our programs are compliant. So when we're moving to the Ben platform, we're picking up these previously external programs and having them ran through the Ben admin, but we trust that those are all compliant.
I think that's a really good point, right? So as I said, making sure that you have the brokers, the vendors, the providers, us as the platform as well, we're all there to support in that, and making sure that you have the right sort of policies, you understand what you need to do in order to be compliant. Usually starts with that, understand what you need to do, and then making sure you're actually implementing it. And I think relying on the providers, the brokers, advisors is usually the easiest way to make sure, because keeping in touch and trying to figure out everything is obviously really difficult unless that's your day-to-day sort of job, and that's what you're doing.
Exactly.
Another one, just picking up, we talked about the small dispersed population, so I think I'll skip that. Maybe we talk a little bit about what do we see in innovative benefits design strategy, Carolina? What are you seeing like in terms of what our companies? Obviously, this is part of the conversation today, but like, is there anything that really stands out in terms of like, hey, what this company is doing is really different, or like, anything that stands out?
I think there is a lot of the starting again. We don't need to go all full blown of flexibility, but thinking about LSA, which is known in the US as lifestyle spending accounts, which is a small budget. Instead of offering a lot of different well-being programs and providers, this is a very innovative way of thinking about offering, again, $500, $300, of course, tailored to each country and each local cost of living, but addressing a small budget where employees can pick and choose well-being programs that matter for them. I think it's a good way to start thinking about being more innovative instead of just adding a lot of those perks and allowances and well-being programs. I would say maybe starting there, it's a lot of companies are thinking about. I would say I have been talking with companies about that pretty much every week. It's something that is not a common trend, but a lot of companies are looking, because this also drives cost efficiency. So instead of you just adding new well-being programs, bringing under one budget helps also with costs. So I would say maybe start there.
Good one. Cool. As I mentioned, we're up to 2 minutes to end here. So there are a couple other questions, but we can kind of address and get back to folks as and when. Make sure we're respectful of your time. I guess, Carolina, Ryan, anything to add as sort of final thoughts before we close with a bit of a poll?
No, just thank you everyone for attending. Hope it was good and insightful to all of you.
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate your time, and know that you're not alone. We're all facing similar challenges.
That's right. You've got a community around you. Yeah, amazing. Thanks, Carolina. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you both taking the time to have the conversation with us today and with the audience. And thanks everybody for dialing in. As I mentioned, there are a couple polls. Stick around, and if you want to get in touch with us, you see our contact details there. Feel free to email us. We're all open to kind of having these types of conversations. So thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate it, and have a good rest of your Wednesday. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.